There is video of this podcast conversation with comedian Trae Crowder, the liberal redneck. If you want to watch the exchange, the link's in the description box of this show.
Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth, not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast. Hosted by Seth Andrews.
I'm going to play some random clips from my special guest, Trae Crowder. He gained fame a few years ago. He was doing these cell phone comedy commentaries. He'd just stand on his back porch and just wax on about whatever was on his mind. This was during the height of the transgender bathroom controversy, when Target was supporting transgender bathrooms and everybody was hitting the roof and there was all this righteous indignation. So Trae Crowder does some commentary and he all of a sudden goes viral. He goes from being a hometown comic to an internationally known name, and his star has really started to shine over the past several years. He joins me on the podcast for a second time. Trae Crowder, good to have you back on, man.
Hey, Seth, good to see you too.
Your star has risen since the last time we spoke. I think it was 2016, and holy shit, man. Can you sort of paint the picture of how your world has changed in the last 36 months?
Well, given that it was 2016, I mean, do you remember what, like, month of 2006 or like season? Was it before the election?
Yeah, it was before the election, and it was, you had done in fact, the reason you were on my radar was the transgender bathrooms thing.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Like,
okay,
what bathrooms you think they've been using was the line I remembered. And it was right then that you appeared on my radar. So that's about the time you were introduced.
What's up, y'all? Liberal Redneck here. We gonna do it again. Fired up, son. I've been seeing all these Facebook posts about transgender bathrooms, and every one of them comes down to the same shit. Well, hell, what's to stop some pervert from wrapping a skirt around his wiener and going in the ladies' room with my baby girl? I ain't having that. We gotta watch out for the kids, the kids. Meanwhile, these are the same motherfuckers that put Mountain Dew in sippy cups and beat a 6-year-old with a wire hanger for standing in front of the TV during Dr. Oz. Y'all are so full of shit. What do you think is gonna happen? You do know that transgender people have existed forever, right? What bathrooms you think they've been using? And how many times you ever hear about what you're worried about happening? Hardly not, never. Because even people that are child molesters are not going to prey on a kid in broad daylight, in public, especially not with their mouth-breathing troglodyte daddy 12 feet outside the door just dying to punch something different. It don't make no sense. And what about little boys? The vast majority of people that prey on little boys are adult males. This law don't affect them one way or the other. So unless you're also suggesting that we have separate bathrooms for Catholic priests, I think you need to cut the shit. Quit being a pussy and say what you mean. You're freaked out. The thought of a man wanting to be a woman disgusts you. Because like most things that disgust you, you lack the capacity to understand it. You know, homos, algebra, shit like that. And y'all ain't gonna change. I realize that now. But that's okay. Because the rest of us are trying to ensure that the next generation, you know, your kids, grow up in a world that's a little more open-minded. And that's happening whether you like it or not. Bye.
Been on a tour ever since, all over the country with 2 other like-minded Southern comedian buddies of mine, Corey Forrester and Drew Morgan. The 3 of us wrote a book together in that time frame. I've been on, you know, Bill Maher's show a couple times, The View and Nightline, and you know, MSNBC and CNN a few times. That type of stuff, and but big personal life change. I moved to Los Angeles with my family in January 2017. I've been out here trying to get TV shows made ever since, while still touring and doing stand-up and, putting out videos and all that. But, yeah, it's been pretty wild.
Nightline, right? Bill Maher, your phone rings and you get off the phone. Do you have that conversation? You're like, how did I get here? Like, I do this from time to time in my own very small way. How did I get here? How did this happen? Like, you're doing stand-ups, you're doing a cell phone video, you're just doing this thing, doing what you do, and all of a sudden lightning strikes. You have those thoughts?
Definitely sometimes. It's very surreal because it's like, I don't feel any different in terms of, like, as a person or anything like that. And, like, I've got 2 young sons, married, all that. And all that is, like, obviously things have changed for all of us. But, like, on just, like, a moment-to-moment basis, things don't really feel that different. But then there are times, obviously, where, things are insanely different and crazy and surreal. And it's all sort of, like, blurred together. And, yeah, it's very it can be very weird, but, in a good way.
Now,
where'd you move? Majority of the time.
Where'd you move to L.A. from again? Remind me. It was Tennessee?
Knoxville, Tennessee, yeah. Well, outside of Knoxville, technically, but yeah.
There's a culture shift, right?
It definitely is, but from doing stand-up and wanting to do stand-up, like, I had taken multiple trips to L.A. already by the time I moved here because of comedy and whatnot. And also I had, like, actively wanted to move out here for the same reasons, like, just because of wanting to get into, like, the comedy industry, that you need to be in LA or New York. But for me, it was LA for that. So, like, I was pretty prepared for that, culture shift. Like, I knew what I was getting into. I mean, it is very different, but, I was ready for it for the most part.
I don't know how else to ask this. I'll just ask it. I mean, liberal redneck is not an act. I mean, you are straight. I mean, you own it. I'm a straight up good old boy. I'm a country boy from Tennessee. It's not like, when the mic's off and the camera's off, you're like, you've got this sort of, I don't know. You don't sound like you came out of Berkeley. You just sound like a dude. You're just that dude. I mean, this is really you, right?
Yeah, the way I normally describe it, because I think it's, an accurate way to describe it, is that the liberal redneck is a character in that it's just me, like, cranked way up to 11,
Hey, the internet. It's me, Trae, back on the porch. I know it's been a minute, but damn, I just been busier than Donald Trump at a fuck shit up conference, so I apologize. But I wanted to come out here because a lot of people have asked me what I think about Black Lives Matter. Well, put simply, I think that they do. Goddamn. And further, I think that responding to that sentiment with all lives matter would be sort of like telling Susan G. Komen to chill it with all the pink shit on account of all cancer sucks. That last part's true, but it ain't really the fucking point. But a lot of other people have talked about those things a lot better than I can. I want to do what I do and address my people for a minute. Because, see, this has been framed largely as being Black Lives Matter versus the police. And from what I've seen, rednecks have pretty unanimously been against Black Lives Matter, which is pretty funny to me. Rednecks, help me out here. When did we start liking cops? I must have missed the memo on that one, boys. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, rednecks and the police are natural enemies and pretty much always have been. You ever seen the show Cops? About every other episode takes place in a damn trailer park. And if that ain't enough for you, the single most popular redneck TV show of all time is literally just about 2 cousin fucking good old boys running from the law in a sweet-ass orange car. You ever see Smokey and the Bandit? The hero ain't fucking Smokey. It's sort of a whole thing with us. I've been surrounded by rednecks my whole life. I have never once seen them react positively to a sudden police presence. Though, to be fair, it's sort of hard to stay positive when you think your midget mud wrestling tournament's about to get shut down. Dirty little titties, skew! See, that's the thing. Cops do fuck rednecks. Always have, probably always will, but we're usually up to some pretty redneck shit. Goddamn, man, what's this country coming to? When a man can't even put a stick of dynamite inside a washing machine with Obama's face painted on the side of it without some pussy calling the law. See, cops and rednecks have a strained relationship because cops typically stand in the way of our shenanigans. But imagine for a second that instead of busting us for trying to sell our food stamps for weed money, they were busting our heads open for resisting arrest. One of our favorite pastimes, by the way. Or they were murdering rednecks in front of kids because we had a gun in the truck, which we always do. What would we say then? What would the NRA say then? Because rednecks love guns, and if you ask them why, one of the most common answers would be because they need them in the event of oppression from a tyrannical government. But when a group of people who deals with that kind of oppression on a day-to-day basis carries firearms and pays with their lives for it, we're nowhere to be found. Not advocating violence against police officers, the assholes who did that are deeply disturbed outliers who don't represent the movement. My point is, I would have hoped that rednecks of all people could have empathized with this whole thing. But we don't. And I wonder why. Just kidding. I don't wonder. Nobody does. Because everybody knows the reason. And that's sort of the whole problem.
Everything about it is authentic. It comes from an authentic place. But, I mean, yes, it's very embellished and exaggerated for, just comedic effect. I tell people sometimes, because every now and then, either on the internet or whatever, I'll run into people who think that I'm, exactly like that, all the time. But, I mean, if I, went around living my day-to-day life, acting the way I act in those videos, I'd be pretty hard to be around, I'd be pretty obnoxious. So it is it's very genuine, but, it's still not exactly just me,
Take a lot of heat from people. I mean, I'm from Oklahoma. I mean, I like to make fun of rednecks because I are one. We can all get our redneck on around here, but there are some people who, if you talk about a certain demographic of people and you talk about the rednecks, how come you're always dogging on the South? How come you're always dogging on the Southwest or the Midwest or whatever? Do you ever get that? Some people give you some pushback?
Not that. I mean, here and there, anytime you operate on the internet, you're going to get all kinds of different, fun and inventive hate spewed at you. They really innovate in the hate world on the internet. But for the most part, the type of stuff I get is mostly directed at either, all the liberal side of it, and or people accusing me of what you were just saying a minute ago, the opposite of what that I'm, faking it all or whatever. But it's not normally focused on the making fun of the South part. I've been doing that since I started. But I mean, I'm doing it in a way I'm doing it from the perspective of somebody that is from there and grew up there. And I'm just talking about, what I know or whatever. So I've never felt like I was, piling on or anything like that, in the same way that, when you see stereotypical, redneck humor or whatever in movies and stuff, it's just lazy and low effort and clearly somebody else's, some Hollywood person's opinion of what the South is like, and it's not and that stuff is obvious. And I think that mine is different because I think they can tell that, I am one of them, genuinely. I always felt like it almost worked in reverse for a long time. When I was starting out doing stand-up and nobody knew who I was yet, the crowds in the South, which is where I mostly was doing shows at, would let me get away with a lot more than they would, if I had been, a New York comic or something like that, because I sounded like them and acted like them and everything.
But you got an affection for the South. I mean, even when you're dogging on, you've got a real, that comes through totally. I mean, it's obvious you've got a love for the South and much of what is in the South.
Yeah, absolutely. Very much. Yeah. And I think, that does make a difference in terms of what you're talking about. People getting upset specifically at that aspect of it, at the making fun of the South part. I think people can tell that it comes from a place of love and all that. So they, it's not as much of a problem.
Yeah, you can make fun of your own family kind of deal, right? Yeah. No one else can, but I can kind of deal.
Right. Exactly.
One of my, I've sort of assembled a list of some of my favorite videos of yours. One of them is the Make America White Again video from June of 2016.
What's up, y'all? Trae Crowder back on the porch. A lot of people have asked me what I think about what happened here in East Tennessee last week. In case you missed it, a crazy old white asshole, or as the GOP calls it, the base, decided he was going to erect a bunch of campaign billboards with the slogan, Make America White Again. This motherfucker here, y'all. See, shit like this is why other people hear my accent and think that I'm about to rip my shoes off and start throwing raccoons through trailer windows. Fuck this guy. Make America white again? When was America white? When white people first came to this country, they had to kill most of the red people just to make room for the black people they were planning on subjugating. This country ain't never been all white. But he means culturally, and that's what he said. He said America would be better off if it went back to the Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver type of life. Oh, really? You mean before the dunk was invented and people thought banana jello was a hidden dessert? No, thank you. American culture has improved dramatically since other races earned the right to make their presence known. I don't want to live in a country without trap music. Fuck you, I'm trying to get turned. And I don't think women are going to start shaking their asses to Kenny G, so to hell with making America white again. And to hell with this guy. And that's been the only good part about this to me, is that as far as I can tell, most people seem to be disregarding this dude like the dipshit pissant that he is. Which I appreciate, because no, this guy does not represent where I grew up. But that doesn't mean he don't represent something. Because, see, he was explicitly and admittedly inspired by Donald Trump. And his logic ain't hard to follow. He thought, well, Trump spoke his mind about Mexicans and Muslims and people loved it. Maybe if I speak my mind about making America white, people will love me too. Luckily, he's a Republican, and like many Republicans, he was wrong about literally everything he thought, so that didn't happen. But it's still a bad sign. That crazy asshole and his crazy asshole opinions would exist with or without Donald Trump, but those signs he put up probably wouldn't, and that's plenty bad enough. To a lot of Trump supporters, making America great again and making America white again are the exact same thing. Let's all try to keep that in mind between now and November. 2 Chainz!
And you're going after the white supremacist really hard. And that element of the South can be ignored, and you do not ignore it. That ever get sticky for you?
Do you mean, do I ever have like encounters with those people? And
do you ever get the death threat, that kind of thing? You know?
I mean, I have, like, that has happened, but not that often, to be honest with you. And even when it has happened, it's been in the form of a, message on Facebook or something like that.
Some keyboard warrior out there.
Right. Yeah. Every time. It's never been a face-to-face. No one's ever sent me anything in the mail or, that type of thing. I mean, thankfully, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I don't want to have to deal with all that, but so far I haven't had to, luckily.
Talk about the neo-Nazi as this group of just perennial losers that have been on the losing side of history time and time again. Now we're seeing an empowering of the white supremacist and the Trump, in Trumpistan. But, you want to talk about that? I mean, you've got a pretty strong take on, these people they're just, I wish I had your timing. I wish I had your language to do it. But we're talking about they have been on the wrong side, the losing end, the short end of the stick every freaking time, right?
Yeah. I mean, historically, they're always on the wrong side of history. It's the same people over and over again. But so, the people at, Charlottesville, there's neo-Nazis at Charlottesville, and they're also flying Confederate flags and everything. So they got swastikas and Confederate flags. I feel a lot of different things about that at the same time, and they're all negative, obviously. But, for one, they're, out there, proudly flying the, regalia and symbols and icons and stuff of two, regimes who famously got destroyed, who got their asses beat by the good guys because they were fighting on the side of evil and lost. And I just don't know what makes a person rally behind that. I guess it's because, they're also losers or feel like that they were, downtrodden and, like underdogs or something, I guess. But it's so weird to me. But the other thing that's weirder personally to me about it is that, like, growing up in the Deep South, I've seen obviously Confederate flags a lot for a long time. Less now than when I was a kid, which is good, obviously, but they are still there. And most of the guys that I knew and saw, like when I was growing up, who would fly the Confederate flag, like, they were not down with Nazis. You know what I mean? Like, I knew plenty of racist papaws who, loved the stars and bars, but had, fought the Nazis in the war or whatever. Like, I don't know when that exactly happened. I mean, I get you can see the philosophies of the two making good bedfellows, but it still is a weird combination to me because that was never a thing before. Like when I was growing up there, the hardcore, rebel flag fellers were not at all also down with the Nazis, and it's just everything about it is just so weird. And I hope that what that all is about ultimately, the reason that they're so outlandish and everything right now and in your face is because I'm hopeful that they are, like, ultimately on a long timeline, they're in their death throes right now. Like, I think that's actually gotten better and better for the rest of us, that they've been consistently losing, on just gradually and continuously year after year. And they reached a point where, they were at the brink of total collapse. And this is like their last gasp, effort at not dying off is what I think and hope. So, we'll see.
Charlottesville, Virginia. Ugly business, man. And all over some participation trophies for our crimes against humanity. I tell you what, I'm glad Dale Earnhardt ain't here to see this shit. Look, with my background, I'm not surprised by all this, but it makes me sad. One of the saddest parts to me is I know these guys, they think they're patriots. Fighting for the real America with their swastikas and their Confederate flags. Man, I don't know that there's any symbol that's more inherently un-American than the Confederate flag. It's sort of the point of the fucking thing. But there they are in full regalia, exercising their rights as Americans. We got a right to assemble here. We got a right to protest for that statue. Fly that flag, buddy. Yes, you do. But screaming about your rights as an American while rocking the Confederate flag is like arguing against gay marriage with a dick in your mouth, you dumb fuck. It makes no sense. But that's the thing with these assholes. They're immune to irony. 100% natural immunity to it. Don't affect them at all. Stand out there hollering about supremacy while cosplaying as two separate regimes famous for getting the shit beat out of them. Supremacy, my ass. Because that's the thing. Ultimately, at their core, these people are losers. Losers who fetishize other losers. I know you can look at the coverage and the pictures and the fucking White House and feel like they're not losing right now, but in the grand scheme, they absolutely are. A few decades ago, they had Jim Crow and George Wallace. This weekend, they could barely find 500 dipshits that could afford a fucking bus ticket. They've been losing battle after battle, fight after fight for over 200 years in this country, and these are their death throes. We just have to stay the course. And on that note, my fellow rural Americans out there, I've known too many of y'all over the years, good people, that see some shit like this and turn a blind eye or bite your tongue because you don't want to fuck up the potluck, and I get that. But them days are over, y'all. Your silence is your complicity. So whether it's on Facebook or face-to-face at a PTA meeting, you got to start letting these assholes know that they do not speak for all of us. Because Trump proved on Saturday, in this, refusing to pick a side is the same thing as picking their side. And trust me, historically, that ain't a side you want to be on. Unless you like losing.
I've got a call on the switchboard. Area code 662. You are on the Thinking Atheist podcast with Trae Crowder. Who's this?
Seth, it's Luke. We talked on Atheist Experience. How you doing, man?
Luke, thanks for calling. What do you have for the show today?
Oh, man, I just wanted to pitch in here. Trae's been a hilarious person, and I want to send him a doctor bill for the busted muscle in my abdomen. That hurt.
All right, yeah.
But, I appreciate that, man.
Actually,
go ahead.
I've got something I want to talk about. It's serious, but you know about fetal heartbeat bills that are going around. You know those that they're trying to make abortion illegal because of a human being being fully formed when their heart is fully formed.
Okay.
And I was thinking, Republicans, they don't believe in life. If they believed in life, they would care about orphans, and they would care about single mothers and all that. So I was thinking, what is this about? It's not about life. But these are mostly Christians, so it's got to be about the soul, right? And I was thinking, where is the soul? And what is that? And it occurred to me that the prefrontal cortex is probably the closest thing to a soul, because that controls all your behavior, all your executive function. And that is not fully formed until you're 25. So we could start aborting people until they're 25.
Well, I mean, if
Wouldn't
we're
that
going
be cool?
if we're going to talk about the church, they believe it's magic anyway. So at the moment of conception, that's when the soul is created, and that's why they're going. And many of them genuinely do believe they're protecting a life. They see it as they've ignored everything else. They're more pro-birth, I'll give you that,
right,
than they are pro-life. I don't know, Trae, I know you've gone after Alabama, talking about the pretty much back-asswards bill and thinking that's been going on down there. You want to speak to any of that?
I mean, I agree with the first, part of that whole thing about, to me, because I've talked about it some before too, that whole pro-life people also being anti, welfare and putting kids in cages, immigrant kids in cages and all of that type of thing, I think is just, baldly hypocritical and shameful on their part. And I've always thought it does illustrate that they're clearly not pro-life. Ultimately, I don't know how they could continue to say that with a straight face, except I do, because I know how their brains work, which is, irregularly. But to me, I don't know how you could do that, be both at the same time. Having said that, like you said at the end there, it'd be more accurate to say they're pro-birth, but in terms of that part of their argument, yeah, that is what they believe, like what you said, for the most part, life begins at conception. And so to them, that means an abortion is killing a baby. They think that, and thus it's no wonder that they can be so, fervent and hardcore about that particular argument. It's a hard one, because you got to think, if someone like Louis C.K. has a bit about that. It's like just actually stop and think for a second that it's this person genuinely believes completely that abortion is murdering a baby. He was like, how would you expect them to act? Of course they're going to be pretty upset about it all the time. It's just, it sucks, because obviously I don't agree with their assessment of it all. But it's just, those people are hard to get through to on basically everything. But I feel like abortion is near the very top of the list for that reason. Yeah. It's hard.
Thank you, Luke. I appreciate the call very much.
Thanks, Seth.
All right. Take it.
Talk to y'all later.
All right. Has it been harder for comedians these days? Some subjects are off limits. Is there starting to be some pushback against that? What's your take on the culture?
You mean PC culture?
PC culture,
Dave Chappelle,
whatever you want to call it. Yeah, are there things that are off limits for comedians, and isn't it the job of the comedian to find the edge of the envelope and push pretty hard? And I don't know that I know the answer. I just, I'm talking to a comedian, and you tell me. Well,
liberal redneck, I consider myself a very liberal, progressive person and everything, but really all of that is from the left. Like, that's all being, coming from the left for the most part. The whole PC culture thing, and you're not allowed to joke about this, you're not allowed to joke about that. And so it's like, I personally have always subscribed to the South Park doctrine. They kind of covered this in one of their episodes, 15 years ago, probably at this point, where that basically they just said it's like either all of it is okay or none of it is. Like, essentially, I don't know how you draw the line between what is and is not okay to joke about. So to me, the rule is, because every single person is going to have a different line that they draw, no matter what, because that's just how people work. Because I've experienced it myself, where like I'd say all this crazy stuff in my videos about any number of different types of people, Christians or rednecks or like Republicans, but also Californians or, vegans or whatever. But then I say, one thing about like Bernie Sanders specifically, and a good chunk of people on my Facebook page flip out because Bernie is unassailable for some reason. Like, you can't make even jokes about it. You can't even call him, say that he looks like a soup-eating mother, which he does. He does. Look at him. Tell me that guy don't eat the hell out of soup all the time. And that's all I say. Anyway, whatever. People got very upset about that because everyone has something, some line that they can draw. Everybody, and everybody's is different. So I don't know how, as a society, we can draw one line and say that's the line, and beyond that, you can't joke about anything. But everything on the other side of it is okay. I just think that's fundamentally impossible to do. So to me, the rule is and has always been, it better be funny. Like, you have to make it funny. If it's genuinely funny and, people understand like the spirit of where it's coming from or whatnot, I still think even in 2019, in the era of outrage culture and cancel culture and all that, I still think that you could joke about pretty much whatever you want to if you're, deft and savvy about it. So I don't think we've gotten to a point yet where you're just straight up not allowed, so far.
Short break. When I come back, I'm going to talk with Trae Crowder about the Well-Read Comedy Tour and a big shout out that he got from a major, M-A-J-O-R, major celebrity. It's a great story. We'll tell it after this. Hang on. I'm going to be part of the Free Thought Florida conference that's coming up in Orlando, Florida, November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. It's a great weekend with a retro theme, a costume party on Friday night. And you don't have to dress up, but if you want to, it's going to be just groovy and totally excellent and tubular and whatever. I mean, whatever your retro is, we're going to do that. I'm up on Saturday morning, going to be a great lineup of speakers. Details at freeflow.org. That's freeflo.org. I'll see you in Orlando, November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Right now, I continue my discussion with comedian Trae Crowder. We talk about the Well-Read Comedy Tour. You referenced it earlier, but what is it and where is it?
The Well-Read Comedy Tour is, me and these other two guys who are like good friends of mine. I've known for years, but they're also from tiny little towns in the deep South and, pinko commie leftists, godless heathen liberals. So that's what made us buddies in the first place. Before all the videos, before all that, we've been friends for a long time. And we tour together, and it's the show itself is, pretty basic in terms of format, stand-up show, which is Corey goes up for a little while, Drew goes up in the middle, I go up at the end. As far as where it's at, we've been, I think it's 46 or 47 states now we've been to, and I don't even know how many cities. I mean, we've been all over the country. It's all over, and we have a website, it's wellreadcomedy.com, and it's redcomedy.com, and it has ticket information about everywhere we're going to be going this fall and beyond. But yeah, we're all over the place.
So yeah, I'd love to be dumb, but I'm not. And I tell you what else, I don't think we're getting dumber as a society either. That's become popular to say. People are like, Idiocracy, movie's coming true. Only stupid people are breeding. No, honey, no. I mean, do you think we're dumber than people used to? Do you know how dumb people used to be? A lot. They were a lot fucking dumb, let me tell you. The people like 200 years ago or whatever believed that women who liked to dance could fly brooms and turn babies into frogs and shit. It's like we are smarter than them by a lot. But I get why people think that. I get why that attitude persists, because this is a real weird time we're living in, if you think about it. This is the first time in all of human history in which stupid people have had a voice. That's never been true. Ever. It's true. I mean, think about it, man. 100 years ago, stupid people couldn't even read. Now they can tweet. Yeah. And they love to tweet, buddy. Take it from me. But what I don't understand is why the rest of us give a shit what they tweet about. And we do. Turn on CNN, man, within 5 minutes. They'll put up a graphic or a ticker or something. Tweets from our viewers. Tweets from the viewers. Why? Oh, yeah. Queefer Sutherland, 69. Let's get his thoughts on ISIS. Why?
Area code 440, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. You're on with Trae Crowder. Who's this?
Hey, this is Lauren. How you doing?
Very well. What's on your mind?
Terrific. Trae, we saw you out at Hilarities last year. Thanks for coming by. You guys were great.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, come back any old time, please. I'd like to throw something out here, maybe not so much a question, but a point of information for discussion. There's a trope that has gone around as it comes to the whole business of being politically correct and whatever else have you, to the effect of, no one has the right not to be offended. Now, I mean, obviously this is potentially a loaded phrase, and it's something that I think absolutely, I think should be a part of this discussion. My question to both of you, Trae and Seth both, especially as it comes to comedy. I mean, yeah, you have to be funny, but at the same time, too, do we really need to be tiptoeing around the people who are such ouch tubes that they can't deal with, something that may not be politically correct?
Trae, you want to go first or what?
No, I mean, short answer, no, I don't think you should have to do that as a comedian. And that thing you said, no one has the right to not be offended. I'm a big believer in that. People get offended. It's like, okay, well, all right, you got offended. So what? Like, what does that matter to the rest of us? Like, everybody gets offended by some things sometimes. Yeah. The only thing with that is there are people who like to use this exact argument as a reason to just like say a bunch of, like vile
mean shit
stuff. Right. Yeah, exactly. And then they use this argument for that. That doesn't mean that it's not still a sound argument though, but I just want to put that caveat out there because that type of thing happens a lot. But no, I don't think, if what you're saying is worth saying and you got a good, way of saying it, you shouldn't have to try to, tiptoe around everybody who might not appreciate it.
I think
no kidding.
If you don't like it, walk out, you get
change the channel,
refund the ticket kind of thing. Now, we have to be careful because there are a lot of people in this world who have been genuinely marginalized and attacked and have lived. I mean, Trae does a lot of work for talking about the challenges that the LGBTQ community go through and talk about a sensitive nerve. I mean, these people have, in so many instances, been on the short end of the stick. They have really been oppressed and marginalized by the culture, and they're fighting for legitimacy every single day. So if I see somebody who's being unnecessarily cruel from the stage to the LGBTQ community, I can say, well, that's offensive. Like I subjectively say that is offensive to me. But I still believe they have the right to say it. And then I have the right to say that. I almost
wonder.
Go ahead.
I almost wonder if we need to come up with a different word for it. I mean, hell, how many of us are offended by, all the BS that gets thrown at us from the Christian right and all this other stuff, and yet they're the ones who are constantly saying, "Oh, we're oppressed. Oh, we're being whatever have you." I also wanted to throw out: have you? This goes back a couple of years, but have you seen Stephen Fry's response to the whole issue of being offended? I think it's actually on YouTube, and it's classic because it ends with the lovely phrase, "What's so freaking what?"
Yeah,
actually, no, it's so fucking what?
Yeah, I was going to say, it was actually a very direct, and, talk about someone who's on the global stage. Stephen Fry is no stranger to controversy or speaking his mind. I think it's important to try to gauge intent. If someone's out there with ill intent and malice, Trae mentioned the word vile or being vile to someone. Look, if someone's out there genuinely doing that, then, we can reject it and say, I don't want any part of that, but they still have a right to say it. And we have a right to support it or not support it. And, at the end of the day, I do think we need to toughen up just a little bit in a lot of ways, because offense culture has made it so that anybody anywhere has got people second guessing themselves. And the role of comedy is to try to get us to not take ourselves so seriously. And, a lot of the comedy, it's like the liberal redneck. A lot of the comedy that you do is directed at your own demographic, Trae, right? I mean, if you're going to dish it out, you're willing to take it as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But one thing I was just thinking about with, outrage culture and all that, one thing that I think is happening a lot of the time with that sort of thing is that there really isn't any actual, true backlash to whatever a thing is. That the backlash itself has kind of been, fabricated wholesale by people, wanting to write clickbait articles or what have you. For example, I don't know if you've seen anything about it or kept up with it at all, but it's been a huge thing in the comedy community recently because Dave Chappelle put out a new special and it's had tons of articles written about it. He's gotten hotly criticized by a lot of, journalists and critics or whatever, people who write articles primarily for the content of some of it, which is he himself says throughout the whole thing, he knows he's pushing buttons and pushing boundaries. He's going to piss people off and all that. And I mean, some of the stuff that's in there, I didn't think was that great or that he necessarily should have said, but he's still, Dave Chappelle. But my point is all these articles and stuff and this big discussion happening online about it. But on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a critics score of 12%, and then with 33 reviews submitted, and it has an audience score of 99% with 600 or something like hundreds of reviews for it. So I just feel like that's I just feel like most people, it seems to me, that watched his special, because there's also some absolutely vintage Dave Chappelle brilliant stuff on it that's just unassailable. I think most people who watched it, even if there were parts throughout it that they weren't really into, I kind of wish he hadn't gone there or said that, still weren't outraged about it or want to boycott Dave Chappelle, and ultimately, enjoyed the thing overall and were just reasonable about it is what I'm saying, instead of getting infuriated like the blogosphere did. And I think that kind of thing actually happens, a fair amount. So
appreciate your call, my friend. Was there anything else?
Well, I wanted to reinforce the one point that I think you brought, Seth, is just growing a little bit thicker skin.
I know it's easy for me to say as a relatively privileged dude. I think if you're always going to allow the stones that are in the path to trip you up, you will never get anywhere. So I just think maybe a better way to say it is we need to do a better job of choosing our battles and choosing who we allow to derail us in our own journey, So
yeah, but I don't, Trey, you can answer this for me if you've got an idea. Are there any gay comedians out there taking left-handed shots at the LGBT community? Because let's be honest, it's a target. And I'll say right now, I'm a member.
Well, I mean, I would, not to jump on Trey here, but I mean, I'm guessing anybody from any demographic they're probably used to making fun of themselves to a degree as part of their act.
Right. That's what I was going to say. There's definitely plenty of comics who absolutely joke about the gay community or being gay or whatever, because, that's their experience. But not in a way that would upset the rest of the gay community, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, that's the magic word, isn't it?
I don't know of any who are like, making their bones by going after the gay community or anything like that, while also being gay themselves. So, yeah.
My friend, I got to move on. I appreciate your call very much.
Absolutely. Take good care, both of you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Probably the best comedians speak to their own, with a few exceptions, speak to their own experiences. They're storytellers. I mean, you got the Stephen Wrights who were doing the abstract one line, and it's brilliant. But I think most of the best comedians, aren't they storytellers?
Yeah, and it's normally coming from, their experience in their life and about their own, community. You know what I mean? Like Chris Rock is my personal favorite comedian of all time, because he's the comedian that got me into stand-up, like, in the first place, really, when Bigger and Blacker came out, that HBO special, when I was like 12 years old. But, Chris Rock has famously, like, had a lot of bits, made a lot of jokes about the black community in America and the state of it and everything. And, a lot of, like, critical jokes as well. But, always from a place of, he's talking to his people about their issues, internally, and how he sees it all. It was never like him being malicious or aligning himself with the other side or anything like that. 'Cause it's like, this is his experience and how he feels about it. And he's one of the greats. I feel like most of the greats, are like that. Bill Burr right now is one of the greatest comedians out there, and he very much has a perspective of a, middle-aged white dude from Boston. But in the best way. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's mad about things, and he's like calling out the, bullshit of society at every level and everything. But he's not punching down or anything like that. He's not abusing his power as a, top shelf comedian to do any of that stuff. But it's all still coming from his perspective.
The greats. I saw a clip where you get a shout out from freaking Morgan Freeman. Tell me this story. What happened?
Well, from my perspective, I mean, I actually still have never in person met Morgan Freeman. I've met, some of his people. I've had like correspondence with him and whatever else, but I still haven't met him in person. But at the time that happened, of course I love Morgan Freeman, who doesn't, but I'd never heard anything about him being a fan of mine or anything like that. It was completely, totally out of left field. Like, I didn't know anything about it.
Food? Your go-to comfort food.
Pasta bolognese.
Who makes you laugh the most?
Who?
We can circle back.
We've left it.
I know who. Trae Crowder.
Oh, yeah.
a lot of people in my hometown or like my wife's hometown who I think had this element, and this is kind of I don't know if try to tell like the short version of this. There's very much a thing in these small towns, but it's mine and hers, which are basically the same type of place culturally, even though they're 5 hours apart, of like the whole like comedy thing and the internet and all that I was doing. Like it wasn't real, do you know, like to a lot of people, like it was like I was living like a fantasy or something. Like it wasn't a real thing that I was doing, I guess. And then that Morgan Freeman thing happened, and it kind of like legitimized me to a lot of those types of people, you know, who before had thought I was just like, you know, playing around.
I thought it was like a hobby, something you kind of did on weekends and
not right. But yeah, just that or that I was like deluding myself about it. You know what I mean? Like that it wasn't like a real thing that I was doing. And then that happened. And for a lot of people that's when they realized like, oh, okay, I guess this is, you know, he's actually at least somewhat legit.
Making that my ringtone. I mean, Morgan Freeman, I just saying my name. I just roll it. I just play it in the background while I'm making dinner. Just, you know, Morgan Freeman, me, Morgan.
It was awesome.
That's really cool. You've been really generous with your time. Real fast, one more phone call, and then we'll call it. Area code 806. Thanks for waiting on me. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast with Trae Crowder. Who's this?
Hey, how's it going? This is John.
John, thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
I was just listening, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I just feel like it is getting harder for comedians to be as funny as they used to be for the various reasons y'all kind of already gone over, because I just don't know if I don't know how to put it really, but like how Dave Chappelle mentioned in that skit, there were certain words that he couldn't say on network TV that I'm not going to repeat here, obviously, but he could say the N-word openly. And he asked him why he could say that. And they said, well, because you're black, and therefore you can say that word. But then he goes on to say, well, yeah, I know I'm not gay, but I understand why you don't want me to use these slurs, but I'm also not an N-word. So that kind of, I don't know if you've seen the special or not, but that joke was kind of a cool joke that resonated with me.
I haven't seen the special. I've seen the controversy around it. His overall point was what?
Basically, he said, you allow me to use the N-word openly, even though it is kind of a negative word, but they won't allow me to use the certain slurs for homosexual people, stuff like that. So his point was basically, why are you limiting certain words that I can say, yet I can also still say the N-word and stuff like that? It was kind of like a free speech point he was trying to make. Anyway, if you watch the special, you'll get it a little more, but I think he made some pretty good points about how free speech is applied differently depending on who's saying it, how it's used, obviously. But in comedy, I think it can really end up hindering people if you're, you know, walking on eggshells on what you want to say. And to be fair, a lot of it is edgy comedy, but you know what I mean? I don't know if you've watched a lot of his work before, but I think he's a really great comedian, and I thought his last special was good.
All right. Well, I'll check it out. I appreciate the call.
Well, that bit in particular he's talking about, basically this is what Chappelle said, is when he was on Chappelle's show, he had to deal with standards and practices a lot at the network. He had a sketch where they said, you know, the F word, fag, right? They said fag. And they told him he couldn't say that. He had to take it out. And he was like, well, but we say the N-word on my show all the time, like over, you know, repeatedly. And that's never been a problem. Why is this a problem? And she said, well, Dave, well, you're not gay. And he said, yeah, well, I'm not a nit either. Right. And that's pretty much the gist of what he said. That particular bit for me while watching it was one that, like, you know, I appreciated like where it was coming from or whatever, but I don't really think it holds up, honestly, for the most part. You know, who am I to question Dave Chappelle? That's not even really what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying, like, in my opinion, that exact same logic applied in reverse would allow like a, you know, white man who is gay or whatever, you know, to say the N-word with impunity on a sketch show or whatever by the exact same logic, just flipped around, which I don't think Chappelle would be on board with. To me, and I'm a straight white guy, so who cares? But like, I think that he should have been able to say both on his show, depending on what he was saying by saying them in the sketches. Like, the context of everything and the intent of it is what should be the determining factor. There shouldn't be a blanket rule that says that a black comic can't say those words on his sketch show, but he can't say the N-word because he's black. Or if you had a gay comic, he could say all the gay slurs, but he couldn't say the N-word or whatever. I think that is all, stupid in a way. It should, the intent and context of it is what should be the determining factor, to me, you know. And again, I really feel like at the end of the day, the vast majority of actual people, just, citizens and not, critics and bloggers and all of that, I think that most people are still pretty good about making that determination when they watch something and understanding what the point that's ultimately being made is, and, not getting all up in arms about it. I think most people are still pretty good at that at the end of the day, despite all this PC culture talk that's been going on lately.
Didn't intend for a good portion of the show to be so heavy. I thought it'd be more like everybody's going that direction. What makes you laugh, dude? What cracks you up?
Oh, well, again, I really enjoyed that special of his, and there was some that he talks about Jesse Smollett in there, or Smollett or whatever, and he talks about school shootings and stuff in a way that's just brilliant and hilarious. So, as far as I'm concerned, Chappelle's still got it. Other things that make me laugh, I also love Bill Burr. Tom Segura is a great comedian. John Mulaney's one of my favorites. Outside of stand-up, I'm trying to think what funny TV shows that I've been watching lately, but I'm drawing a blank.
Or maybe
right
you just
now,
want a break. Maybe funny, as a profession. After a while, you just want to go somewhere and just be all thoughtful.
Yeah, that's very much a thing. I do feel that way sometimes, and I know a lot of other people that work in the either stand-ups or comedy writers or what have you, also are that way. Like when they, when they're trying to take a, break for their own personal entertainment, comedy's the last thing they want to watch. They want to watch, a thriller or true crime or whatever. Sometimes I feel that way, but I also still very much enjoy, comedy products too. I normally I like the stuff that is, attempting to say something for the most part. That's always been my personal taste. Like any kind of comedy that you can tell has a point or a message that they're trying to get across instead of just being funny, which sometimes I also love that. But my favorite things have always been the things that are wrapped around some kind of larger point that is trying to be made, Yeah. So anything in that ballpark is my stuff.
Trae Crowder. How do people find you if they're just now being introduced to you and your work? Best resources to find your work?
Mentioned earlier, well-read, R-E-D, wellreadcomedy.com for tickets and information and all that. As far as everything else, you can just use my name, Trae, T-R-A-E, Crowder, on Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, all that. It's, just search for my name, YouTube. You'll find it that way.
Awesome. Trae, you're a funny guy, and you're real, and I just love your stuff, and I'm so glad you took a few to talk to us here today. And we'll point some folks your direction, and all success to you, okay?
Thank you very much, Seth. It's good to be on here again. I much appreciate it, buddy.
You bet.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. For a complete archive of podcasts and videos, products like mugs and t-shirts featuring the Thinking Atheist logo, links to atheist pages and resources, and details on upcoming Free Thought events and conventions, log on to our website, thethinkingatheist.com.